Exactly. That's exactly it. I mean, you see what Donald Trump is doing. You know what's going on. And also, let me see, Front Porch Media over at Rumble, you guys, tons of great comments. I want to point out this one and a couple other ones. And start with this. Front Porch Media says, ceasefire, translation, real estate score. And you allow me to leverage off of that statement with something I was thinking about, and maybe many of you have been thinking about this, because we know that the way the banking system and the corporate fascist system of the United States is set up through the fiat banking and fractional reserve system we have is set up, that the people that are closest to the banks during the so-called boom period, of course, get the money before it loses its buying power. Then people start to spend and buy based on their expectations and low interest rates. They overextend themselves. They do things like mixing labor and things into resources, pulling resources out that normally wouldn't be pulled out on that time schedule, expecting they're going to have a lot of purchases. And of course, bidding prices up as the productivity curve doesn't rise as steeply as the monetary inflation curve, and the inflation of the money supply causes the boom, but then the crash comes, and all those bidded prices that are up so high need to be liquidated, right, for all those things. Now they've had all sorts of things mixed into them: time, labor, expectations, natural resources that normally wouldn't have been devoted to those things, human resources, and so on. The jobs that were created now have to be liquidated. And what's interesting is, as we know, the people who got the money and are close to the banks scoop all those now transformed resources up at rock bottom prices, right? Front Porch. And then, of course, they gain more in their wealth compared to the average people who are really hit by the bust. Okay. Now, during this time period, and I was listening to someone a little bit earlier, I think it was Judge Napolitano was speaking with someone in one of the chats he had early this morning, and he was saying, wouldn't Israel, it might have been Daniel Davis, wouldn't Israel and the Israelis feel that they're affected by this, and they'd be worried about, their survivability if, say, oil prices shoot up and fuel prices shoot up and things like that, if that is just it and there's no kinetic, launches that would really put the population of Israel at even greater harm. If it's just the economic impact, wouldn't that impact the Israelis as well? And this person said, well, you got to understand, most of these Israelis they're connected on the upper echelons of the media, banking establishment. So just like you say, Front Porch, this is to them not a bad thing. They're not worried about it, because they're not only are they fine as far as it goes, unless their lives are put at stake or their political futures are put at stake, but in addition to that, financially, when this shakes out and more people have to give up land and farmers have to give up farms and things like that, they'll be scooping this stuff up because of the economic disruption that Donald Trump has caused. So that's a really, really good point. Jason Barker is in the house. Karen Carpenter is in the house. The Knights of the Storm are here with their armor. Awesome. Thank you, guys. And by the way, Wilterbox says, hi, Karen and friends, F-R-E-N-Z. If you want to get a really good album, get the album by The Fall called The Friends Experiment, F-R-E-N-Z. That's probably their best album. They do a cover of Victoria on it. It's a really good version of it. So thanks everybody for being there inside Rumble. And also to you who are watching on X, I know we've got a sizable audience tonight, and that's great. And welcome to our first day of our summer celebration. We're going to be digging into some fun stuff tonight. Just to let you know, the surprise, I'm going to tell you early. I finished the short story Call, and I'm going to read the whole story tonight at the end of the show. So stick with us. I hope you like it, and let me know if you know how it's going to end. You can put your predictions in. Put them in the comments section. That'll be fun. All right, now, while this is going on, thank goodness, everybody. I feel like Arnold Rimmer on Red Dwarf. Chameleonic life forms? No, thanks. Well, thank goodness the EU just issued, yes, of course, a smokescreen statement telling Israeli forces to lay off Lebanon. This comes at a time when Israel is finishing its latest phase of immoral expansion, moving up to and beyond the Litani River and taking nearly 3,000 lives. Oddly, the EU was silent the whole time. Well, you can see the Cradle's headline there. Let's just refer to that before I go into the rest of that paragraph. The European Union has called on Israel to halt its aggression on Lebanon. Wow, boy, bicycle repairman, we're saved. Yes, oddly, the EU was silent the whole time. Oh, and by the way, 17, we did the research here, the Russians and I, 17 member EU states actively allow and encourage arms makers to sell to Israel. And that isn't stopping. How strange, how queer. One wonders how much stock of these arms makers, the mucky mucks in each EU nation or representatives from those nations who are in the EU body own. So here's the Cradle reporting on it. We, the stiff upper lip people, call on Israel to stop its military escalation in Lebanon and respect Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity, EU spokesperson Anwar El-Anouni said. I don't know. I haven't heard Anwar El-Anouni speak too much prior to this. Have you? I think I've probably seen more reruns of Mickey Rooney than Al-Anouni. Nanu, perhaps. So here's some information for the paid subscribers and for all the other cool cats. Let's lay out some of the current corporate state Israeli ties these Euro governments have. A large majority continued to do their sales in 2024, the most recent year with detailed EU-wide data. The EU approved roughly 820 million euros in arms export licenses to Israel since 2024, despite the Gaza conflict. That's nearly $1 billion in arms and euros, with 17 member states issuing permits. These are typically commercial sales, not necessarily free government aid. They're subject to national export controls and EU common position rules. The tops, France, with approximately 362 to 368 million, then Germany with 164 to 169 million. This is in euros. And they historically have been the second largest. France just happened to beat them last year. Greece is next with 114 to 115 million. Romania, 103 million. The Czech Republic at 35 million. And Finland at 17 million. Now, smaller approvals came from Hungary, approximately 5 to 6 million. Latvia, Croatia, with minimal amounts from Austria, Bulgaria, Cyprus, Estonia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Poland. Some countries like Italy and Spain and parts of Belgium and the Netherlands announced restrictions and suspensions or case-by-case reviews. But, of course, pre-existing contracts and so-called non-lethal items will continue. Now, just to let you know, there's even more, because if one looks it up, one finds out that, let me just go here. Yeah, I'll give you the rest of the report tomorrow, because there are a lot of private corporations that get contracts from the nation states, which are basically corporate fascist nation state setups. So it's not even specifically the direct allotments coming from the states. There's also a certain percentage. I got to do the calculations on that for tomorrow to get to that. So this statement from the EU is utterly meaningless. It is just a disaster. And it's insulting, just ridiculous. But you know what? You know what else is insulting? As you know, coming from MRC TV, one of the things that we would do at MRC TV is look at media bias. And it started during the time period of the old dinosaur major three networks of CBS, NBC, ABC, which essentially came out of the United States creation of the Federal Radio Commission, then the Federal Communications Commission. So they only license certain favors to people. So you got these three major networks. It started with two called the Red and the Blue networks, and then they added one more. So you got ABC, NBC, CBS. But one of the things I wanted to mention is that we often will look at media bias. And of all things, NewsGuard, which supposedly was a media bias watchdog, would send us messages to say, well, you better answer us or we might downgrade you with your reliability online. And of course, they didn't tell anybody that they were funded by the U.S. government. And they were going after a guy like me, making like $10 a week doing it. So anyway, here's something to look at. As a former writer for MRC TV, which watches media bias, this kind of thing stands out to me. How about you? CJ Werleman writes this. A new study shows the New York Times, the Associated Press, the Washington Post, CNN, Politico, USA Today, and Axios collectively use the term savage 16 times for the killing of Israelis, but never for the killing of Palestinians during this study period that they opened up. Likewise, the word slaughter appeared 120 times in relation to the killing of Israelis, but only once for Palestinians. Also, massacre was used 344 times in relation to Palestinians killing Israelis, but never for Israelis killing Palestinians. Also, barbaric was used 14 times to describe the killing of Israelis, but 0 times in relation to the deaths of Palestinians. The cable coverage displayed a similar pattern. Here's MSNBC. MSNBC presenters and guests used the term massacre 177 times, barbaric 46 times, savage, not Michael Savage, 23 times, and slaughter, not Karen Slaughter, the novelist, 102 times in relation to Israeli deaths. They never called the killing of Palestinians barbaric or savage. This, of course, despite the fact that bodies were blown in half and shown in TikTok videos, that sort of thing. No. They never did that in relation to the Palestinian slaughter, the genocide. They only used the term massacre 8 times and slaughter 4 times. References to savagery and barbarism echo the logic of settler colonialism, identifying the uncivilized natives as a problem to be solved. And of course, as we know, that is the way that the Israelis look at the non-Jews, the non-Israelis, we should say, the non-Zionists. They are considered animals or insects. So here we go. The change of language makes it easy. There's a little chart for you if you want to take a screen cap. I don't know the CJ Werleman show, but thank you, CJ, for getting that information out there. Appreciate that. And there's a little bit more that I want to give to you as well. Check this out. In July 2025, the Labor Party government gave special mission immunity to the head of the Israeli Air Force, the key architect of Gaza genocide, so that he could visit the UK. Yeah. The same government just banned journalist Hassan Piker and, of all people, the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur from the UK for criticizing that same genocide. Literally, a guy involved in committing genocide, they allow him in so he can visit the UK. But they don't allow reporters in who are mentioning, by the way, this guy was involved in committing genocide. I know he looks like Robert Duvall. It's just crazy. As a guy who shaves his head, I'm ashamed. This is awesome. Smoove says, how many times were the Israelis called cavemen versus Hezbollah? Og is rolling in his mass grave. Yeah. So that's a reference to our old caveman radio skits where Og, the caveman, has somehow had a radio show, and he would get different reports from Grumpy Old Caveman. And Grumpy Old Caveman was Paleolithic, and he didn't like the Neolithics and all their new ways. It's like, yeah, you and your upright posture. You know, when I was a kid, we didn't have upright posture, and it was fine. We'd walk around and let our knuckles drag on the ground. Now what do you got? Oh, I'm walking tall. Bah. when I would, and then he asked him, well, what's traffic like on continent? You and your continents. When I was a kid, we had one continent. Now it's plenty. Pangaea. I'm from a different continent. Stupid refinement. That was fun. And by the way, just to let you know, Israeli journalist Gordon Levy, because he's such a class act and not a caveman in any way whatsoever, now that Gaza has been destroyed almost completely, Israel is advancing confidently toward the next phase, making the entire population permanently disabled, injured, sick, hungry, homeless, and unemployed. It's the prelude, says Levy, to mass expulsion. No society can function without teachers, doctors, social workers, engineers, and clerks, and without a functioning society, it's easy to expel Gaza's residents to the four corners of the earth. And that is an opinion piece, of course. So, yeah. Meanwhile, we saw what they did in England, allowing that wonderfully heroic pilot in. Yes, thank you for your service, Mr. Israeli jet fighter genocide committer. Well, guess what? Another man wanted for genocide is Bezalel Smotrich. Guess where he was? Yes, over the weekend. He was in New York City, and he is wanted for war crimes. Oh, look, Israeli Minister Smotrich says ICC prosecutors seeking warrant for his arrest. Yes, that's right, Smotrich. But where was Smotrich? Yes, he was in New York for the New York Israeli anniversary parade, hanging out with people like, you got it, Chuck Schumer, U.S. Senator, so-called Representative Dan Goldman from New York. That would be Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, Letitia James, New York State Attorney General, Jessica Titch, the New York City Police Commissioner, Mark Levine, not Mark Levin, the New York City Comptroller. Now, you might be familiar with him. He's the one who pushed to get the credit card codes applied for the banks so that the banks would have gun sale purchases now included in their credit card purchases, and he wanted that data shipped to the government. This is about 4 years ago now, almost 3.5, 4. And he said that he would pull the retirement packages out of those banks if they didn't apply that on their credit cards. So Bank of America started to move. There was such a hue and cry that all the rest of the banks backed off, and Bank of America had to back off too. Then there's Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City, and Eric Adams, former mayor of New York City, and Bruce Blakeman, Nassau County executive and Republican gubernatorial candidate. New York Mayor Mondami and ally Brad Lander skipped the event. However, I would like someone to ask, if anybody is in the New York area and you can get the information out there, I would be very interested, and I would give Mondami the benefit of the doubt. Although we don't agree on a bunch of things economically and political philosophy, I would like to give the man the benefit of the doubt. Not that I'm in a position where I can demand anything, but as another person, I would hope that I could demand an answer from him why he didn't try to arrest Bezalel Smotrich. The way that he says, if Netanyahu comes to New York, he would arrest him. Here's a little bit more. Finance Minister Smotrich, where is it? This is way, way up. Here we go. Israeli outlet Ynet reports on Israel's delegation to the New York parade. Let's talk about them, starting with Israeli cabinet minister Amarti Eliyahu, who wants to drop a nuclear bomb on Gaza. These are the people that all those politicians decided they'd spend some time with this weekend, because it's all about the state of Israel. And you can bet that, and you know what's interesting about that is, who's that congressman? Oh, what's his name? I'll think of him in a little bit. But he represents, he has a very large Hasidic Jew population in his district in New York. And he has said they're anti-Zionist. Well, I'll get to that in a minute once I can remember the dude's name. If anybody can come up with that, he's often made fun of. But anyway, so check out this. Far-right minister says Israel should drop bomb Yeah, that's right. And starve Gazans. That's Emikai Eliyahu. Did anybody speak up about that over the weekend except pro-peace people? And another reported Israeli delegate to the New York City March, Diaspora Affairs Minister Amichai Chikli, openly campaigned for neo-Nazis in Europe and campaigned against Zoran Mandami, calling him a dangerous Islamist, and, of course, moved to ban Mandami's wife from coming to Israel. So here's a little bit more. Romania accuses Israel of election interference after Netanyahu ministers call with pro-Nazi candidate. Yeah, but, you know, sort of like the old mafia, the old Israeli mafia cozying up to the Nazis back in the 40s. Chikli also banned dozens of human rights groups from operating in Gaza because they criticize Israeli policies, restricting the operations of aid groups in the region. Another reported delegate, of course, was Minister Ofer Sofer, who works to bring foreigners to his illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. Yeah, granting them a monthly stipend to live on lands that they've stolen from Palestinians. That's another one of the contingent. Now, I don't know, maybe, just maybe, some people might have been thinking, wow, these guys, they must be bad guys. Wow, maybe they weren't involved with extrajudicial murder in the Caribbean, so I guess they must be okay in that case. I guess it's all relative, right? Then, of course, another reported delegate, Minister Yitzhak Wasserloff, called for Jewish settlements in Gaza and stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of the holiest sites of Islam. And if you didn't see, by the way, a bunch of Zionists appeared on the steps of the mosque, which is forbidden, and displayed the Israeli Pentastar flags there just over the past 24 hours. And let's see. Oh, look, here's the article from Yedoth Anra mentioning the ministers invited to the New York City parade. Zero coverage in American media that the parade will reportedly be led by people who want to nuke Gaza and align with neo-Nazis, who are literally on the wanted list. It's just amazing. But remember, don't walk into the press office. It's just nuts. And here's a little something about the Jewish mentality from the Zionists. Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs President Dr. Daniel Diker praises WJC President Ron Lauder's call to unleash the Mossad on critics of Israel. That's right. So you might have seen this one. This is Lauder from Estee Lauder fame. The Mossad should be sicked on Israel's enemies in the PR war, he says. We've got a lot of resources.
The Jewish state is facing rockets of disinformation every minute of every day. There is no less a campaign to destroy the country. And it's coming from TikTok. It's coming from mainstream media, from the BBC, from CNN. It's coming from each posting, each headline.
Isn't that funny? Did any of you notice how this terrible, awful, really, really bad, no good, really bad day, horrible day, like the children's book of posts about Israel that they call anti-Semitic posts, somehow only started appearing when, Israel turned to 11 on its genocide? Did you notice that? That's weird, isn't it? It's so strange. It's almost like maybe they're not anti-Semitic and they're just being critical of a genocidal, homicidal, maniac state. I don't know. I might have the wrong perspective. Then, maybe I could speak with Smotrich and he'd set me right, because I'm sure he'll just be allowed anywhere in the United States. And because he's such a nice guy. He's just totally styling. He's awesome.